Welcome to a Raw Chatter. It is your host here, Vicky Midwood speaking, and this is episode 25. And I'm going to be talking about the key ingredients to helping you to transform your relationship with yourself, with alcohol, with food, or with any other habit that you feel is causing you issues, making you anxious, feeling uncomfortable in your own skin. This is the last one of season 3, folks. I'm going to be taking a little break through the end of July and through August. So we will be resuming again in September. So I wanted this one to really help you to understand what are the key things that you need to help you to feel in the right space, in the right place, in terms of really your head and your thought processes. And just what are those ingredients? And the thing is this, there is no magic bullet. There is no one thing that will help you to stop doing the habits, the routines that you have been doing probably for decades, whether that's yo-yo dieting, whether it is tracking every single morsel calorie-wise that goes in your mouth, whether it is having a routine where you rip yourself to shreds every time you look at yourself in the mirror multiple times a day, whether it is telling yourself that you're not as good as X person, that comparison-itis, as I call it. Whatever is your habit that is causing you not to feel great about yourself, it's never going to be one thing that's going to stop you from doing it. And you've heard me say this before. If you try and stop doing something, right, good luck with that. Because stopping doing something does not always work, except in rare occasions. And even then, you have a strategy in place to help make the stopping so much easier. Now, a friend of mine who you may or may not follow, Pete Cohen, has a Start One, Stop One program, which is excellent because what he talks about there is exactly that. If you stop doing something, you start doing something else. Because what we know is that if we're going to try and change habits, just trying to break them and not do them leads to feelings of ridiculous uncomfortableness. And I don't even know if uncomfortableness is a word, but anyway, there you go. You know what I mean. And what I want to help you to recognize is that uncomfortable is a feeling. And feelings will pass, but only if you let them. So if you talk about how uncomfortable you feel, if you focus on how uncomfortable you feel, if you tell everybody about how uncomfortable you feel, you are absolutely 10xing how uncomfortable you feel, because that is all you're thinking about. And as you know, you've heard me say this before, where your focus goes, grows. So the more we think about something, talk about something, the more of that thing we're actually inviting in. That is the law of reciprocity. Call it the law of attraction. Doesn't matter what term you use. But basically, the more you're thinking about any subject, the more you're inviting more of that in. Which is why I say to everybody that I work with, that I help in whatever capacity it is, whether it's to do with changing your attitude and your connection to yourself, or whether it's helping you with anxiety, or whether it is trying to make strides in your business or your personal wealth. If you are thinking and talking about what you don't want, you are inviting in more of what you don't want. Because what you are thinking about and talking about is going to expand and grow. As far as the world is concerned, your energetic vibrations are concerned, it doesn't hear the word don't. It just hears what you're talking about. So if you're talking about no money, you're going to get more no money. If you're talking about a lack of energy, you're going to have more lacking energy. So really focusing on what you are thinking about and talking about is so, so important. And if any of you have watched my Nourish Not Punish video, you'll remember that I speak about not just nourishment in terms of the food that we put in, but the environment that we surround ourselves with. What are we listening to on podcasts, on the radio? What are we watching on TV and in films? Because those messages are going into your subconscious brain and you are remembering stuff. So if we're watching things like the news, which is always bad, and it's designed to be. It's fear-mongering because that's what it knows. The news programs know and media knows that if they can shock you and make you scared, you're going to keep coming back for more, right? It's just like a film script. Is it helpful to you if you've got issues around health and worries about what's going on in the economy? Not at all, right? I always say to all of my clients, and I mentioned this on the last podcast, turn off the news. The first thing you should do, right? Stop watching the news. It is not helpful to anybody. And if you're screaming at me, I won't know what's going on. Yeah, you will, right? People will tell you, you'll see stuff on social media, right? You're not going to escape it. You're not going to be left in the dark. It's just not possible. But don't watch it. It's like feeding yourself garbage, right? Why would you go to the bin and take out the garbage and feed yourself that? That's what you're doing when you're listening to the news. It's rotten. It's bad for you, right? So stop doing it. So back to my point, as usual, I've gone off on a tangent, but where your focus goes, grows. And so what are the key things to helping you to make changes more easy? Here's what we got to remember. And I know I've said this before, but this is kind of like a bit of a recap of all of the stuff that we've covered. Our beliefs are the things that tend to run our unconscious automatic patterns. And our beliefs come about because we've taken certain actions that create certain feelings and emotions, and our brain logs them. Okay. And it means that you don't have to think about doing every single thing every single day. You don't have to remember how to dress yourself. You don't have to remember how to brush your teeth. You just do this stuff on automatic pilot. So a lot of our habits around food and around alcohol are just things that we've repeatedly done, and we've gotten into a pattern that is comfortable, that is familiar. And when everything that we are doing is comfortable and familiar, your brain likes it, right? Because you are safe. And remember, your brain really has one job, particularly the oldest part of your brain, the reptile part of your brain, and that is to keep you alive. That's it. And that means you being safe, you feeling safe. Now, when we start to feel unsafe, we start to feel scared or uncomfortable because there's an unfamiliar sensation going on, then the brain goes, threat, death. Now, that sounds extreme, but your reptile brain is literally based back in the days when anything that was a threat to your life could mean that you would no longer survive. So when I talk about stress, I tend to talk about threat because it's a threat response that elevates your glucose levels. Your adrenaline comes in, your cortisol comes in, right? The doors open to allow glucose to flood into your system so that you can either run away and stand and fight. But we know that that doesn't happen. Now, when we keep getting that repeated stress response inside your body, physiologically, there is a knock-on effect in that it depletes certain hormones. It also depletes certain vitamins and minerals too every time you get a stress response. And your body is going to go, hey, I need something to replace all of this energy that I'm letting go in terms of blood sugar elevated, putting the glucose into your system. The problem is that insulin will come in because you're not actually active, and it will reduce those blood glucose levels, and often it just reduces them a little bit too low. So now that there is a message to the brain, hey, blood glucose is getting low, let's have something that is going to elevate those blood glucose levels quickly. Don't forget, your brain, as far as you are concerned, is in survival mode. It doesn't know that you've got all day long to get some more food, that you weren't actually under threat, you don't really need to eat right now, this second. But the message your brain is telling you is that actually you do. And this is where we realize that we start to feel compelled, that even if we're not necessarily hungry, we get this feeling that we need to have something, whether it's a cup of coffee, whether it's a cake or a biscuit, or whether it is you going, dare I have a drink yet? Because that will make me feel less anxious, more calm. It will also elevate your blood glucose levels. And when your body gets that response and that reaction going on multiple times a day, your brain knows what the answer is. It's food or it's alcohol. Why? Well, it works. And it's as simple as that. And what works, your brain logs it. And so as soon as you start to feel that feeling, that sensation, that emotion again, you've already got your hand in the fridge or in the cookie jar or in the drinks cabinet before you've even become aware of it. And this is why it's very difficult for people to understand that change has to become conscious. When you're in that pattern of behavior, there's no way you're going to stop it dead. You could recognize that your hand is reaching out and you could pull it back before you've reached for the thing. But it takes quite a lot of connecting to yourself and being fully aware of what is my hand doing, what am I actually doing with my arm for you to be able to do that. And most people initially don't have that powerfully strong connection because you've reached for it and it's in your mouth before you've even consciously become aware of what's going on. So how do we stop that? And that's what I'm going to help you to look at today. We stop that by sitting down and doing the work that we need to do when we're not in that state of anxiety. When we have got some time and some space to sit down and look back at what are our patterns? What do we actually do? And what are the feelings that tend to just come in before we do the thing? Now, some of you may have heard me talk about this before, but the key things that send us turning to food or alcohol are usually uncomfortable feelings that we're just not sure what to do with. One of the most powerful ones being we're annoyed or we're angry or we're wanting to avoid something or somebody, right? So it's a distraction. Basically, we're avoiding doing something. Now, those three tend to be really, really powerful: angry, annoyed, and avoiding. So ask yourself, what do I tend to turn to? If you're frustrated because your computer's not behaving properly and you want a distraction because you want to avoid dealing with it right now until, right? That's a common one. For me, that's often when I go off and make a cup of coffee because I'm just like, I need to walk away. Actually, I don't need the coffee. I do need to walk away. And this is where recognizing that we can change the habit, we can tweak the habit so that we're not doing the same stuff that we always do, so that we're going to start to rewire a different pathway that your brain and your body automatically will associate with that feeling and that sensation. So one of the things you might want to try and do is physical activity. If you're angry, avoiding, or annoyed, one of the best things that you can do to change your energy, to change your emotion, to change your feeling is to move your body. And it could be literally running on the spot. If you are doing something on the computer or on a screen and it's driving you insane, or there is somebody in the room that's talking loudly and it's just getting on your tits, then you need to get hell out. So change your environment. Skipping on the spot, doing air squats. If you're in a work environment and you're going, well, I can't do that, go into the toilet, go into the cubicle. You can squat up and down on the loo, hover above the seat, stand up a number of times. It will help you to utilize some of the glucose that your body has brought into your system through that stress response, but it will also help you to calm down a little bit. And if you're taking yourself away from the thing or the person that caused the annoyance that you're trying to avoid, that made you angry, then already we've got a change in our state, mental, emotional, and physical. So this is practical stuff that you can do. The other things that tend to be kind of strong drivers, call them triggers, call them cues, call them drivers, I don't really care what term you use, tend to be loneliness and boredom, right? So here's the thing, lonely and bored. Okay. We've got this thing at this, in the last sort of 10 years, I feel it's kind of escalated more, that I see it with parents all the time. They're terrified of their kids being bored. Why? Right? Boredom is a feeling, it's a sensation, and it's something that we need to be able to manage and deal with. We need to create emotional resistance. Emotional resistance just means that we can deal with uncomfortable, unfamiliar feelings and sensations, and we can just sit with them. We don't have to respond by reaching out for something, whether it's going online shopping, or whether it's cleaning, or whether it is sex, whether it is food or drink. Whatever the thing is, it's a response usually to an uncomfortable feeling or an emotion that we want to change. And so what I'm going to invite you to do is just get used to feeling uncomfortable, because as I said, if you talk about it and you think about it and you focus on it, it's going to 10x, right? But if you just go, oh, that's interesting, this feels a bit uncomfortable, how curious, and then you just let that feeling pass. It will. Feelings are literally like a running stream. They keep flowing, right? And they're flowing consistently. Your brain is having thoughts all of the time. You can only ever have one thought at a time, even though for some of you who have neurodiverse brains, it feels like they're having a million thoughts at a time. Honestly, it still can only think one thought at a time, but it's how quickly those thoughts come in one after the other that is the difference between somebody who has a neurodiverse brain and somebody who doesn't. But the point is that those thoughts are coming all of the time. And some of those thoughts will trigger powerful feelings, and some of them not so much. The ones that trigger powerful feelings is the feelings that you have to let flow, right? The feelings will do this if you let them flow down the stream. But if you keep throwing in a load of twigs and leaves and stones, and you keep damming up your running stream because you're hanging on to those feelings, it's not going to feel good. So clear the dam out of the way. Notice, acknowledge, let it pass. That's interesting. Well, that's curious that I feel like that when that happens. This is about you getting to know yourself and what you can do to help yourself to feel okay with not feeling okay. So when you're lonely and when you're bored, what can you do? Well, it's a brilliant time to get creative. It means you've got some time. And what is the thing that people moan about the most? Oh, I haven't got time, right? Where does the day go? How come the year's gone so quickly, right? We're always talking about not having enough time. So if you're saying you're lonely and you're bored, utilize it. Do something that you said you were going to try. Maybe try an online course. Maybe start dancing and moving your body so that you change your energy and you lift your mood. Maybe try meditation. Maybe try singing. Maybe try picking up the phone and actually having a conversation with somebody rather than just texting and non-verbally communicating, because verbal communication helps us to feel a part of. When we're having a two-way conversation, utilizing our vocal cords, it brings in our nervous system. Our vagus nerve, right, is attached to our throat. And when we talk and when we hum and when we sing, we're helping our nervous system. So having an actual conversation with somebody is going to be really beneficial if you're lonely, if you're bored. Can you get out of the house and go somewhere and just strike up a conversation? Yes, it's going to feel uncomfortable. Yes, some people might think you're a little bit weird, but hey, you're not in their head. And unless they tell you what they're thinking, they're not going to know. You're not going to know, rather. So do things that you wouldn't normally do, because then you can experience things that you wouldn't normally experience. And if we allow ourselves to do that, we can start to expand what feels familiar. And if we can expand what feels familiar, rather than stepping outside of it, but just expand it, it means that change then is actually quite exciting and fun, as opposed to being hard and difficult and painful. Because it doesn't have to be if we choose to look at it a different way. So the other things that I wanted to just touch on that tend to send us towards food or drink or other distractions that aren't necessarily great for our health and our well-being are if we're tired, if we are tense, if we are telling ourselves we deserve a reward or a treat. And this is something that we have learnt, right? As a kid, unfortunately, social conditioning taught us that we get rewarded and we celebrate with sweet, sugary, carby foods. It's somebody's birthday. You have cake and you have crisps and you have crappy food, right? That tends to be sweet, like ice cream and custard and chocolate and all that kind of stuff, right? So we got that association early on. The same with alcohol. It's your birthday. Let's celebrate with champagne. You won an award. Let's celebrate with champagne. You getting married, etc., etc. You see where I'm going. We have learned to attach the connection between alcohol and sweet foods with reward. So is it any wonder those are the things that we turn to when we feel like we deserve to feel better, like we've worked hard and we want a treat? Of course not. So stop beating yourself up, right? That's programming. And it's programming that happened when you were tiny because your parents were doing it when you were a bump in their stomach, right? That programming goes in. And yes, we start to get the programming while we're in the third trimester, folks. So what you're hearing and what you're exposed to on a cellular level, even when you are a bump in your mum's tummy, it's going in there. You don't think it is, but it is. So our programming is such that we already have this powerful connection. Okay, so if you're going to try and fight it, it's going to be a challenge. So don't fight it, but decide if you, as an individual, want to do something different. So could you decide that for you, a reward is something that you rarely get? So it might be a fruit that is very expensive, okay, because it's out of season. It might be that you actually would like something that lasts a little bit longer. So you might want to treat yourself to something that every time you pick it up will remind you of how well you did in that particular thing. Because these are options that you can bring in. If everybody is celebrating a birthday with cake, do you need to join in? Well, you don't have to, but there's going to be peer pressure, right? And then it becomes a dilemma and it becomes a choice. And what does that leave you feeling? Tense, right? And so we tend to give in because it's easier, don't we? But you need to be able to be in a position where you can say, okay, what if I just get curious and have just a mouthful of this cake so I'm participating, and then leave it to one side? What often tends to happen, especially around cake and celebrations and stuff like that, is that if you are somebody who is bulimic or an emotional eater, it will set off a thought process that means that now you're just thinking about cake. So if you don't have it, you're thinking about it because you can still see it and everybody else is participating and you're not. So now you're feeling deprived. That's likely then to send you to go and get cake when you're at home on your own, and probably 5 times as much or 3 times as much, or whatever. In my case, it was 5 times as much, which means that you've kind of defeated the object than if you would just given yourself permission to have one piece whilst you were there, because then you wouldn't be thinking about it. Now, what can happen, and what used to be the problem with me, was that if I did have that one piece, I would still be thinking about it and I would want more. But then I couldn't go back for more, because what would people think if I went back for a second and a third? And then my brain would kick in and go, oh my God, now you need to get rid of it. So a whole crazy cascade would happen just because of the dilemma of cake. If I'd have just had one mouthful, would it have stopped that? Probably not. But if I allowed myself to get curious and find out, I'd know for sure. And this is what I'm inviting you to do. We won't always know what works for us, but if we give ourselves permission to get curious and see what happens, then you're going to start again to expand what is familiar. Right? It may be that you just saying yes to the cake and having it on a plate, but not actually eating it, is sufficient for you to feel a part of. And so now you don't have that dilemma of having tasted it and maybe kicking off the rest of that whole roller coaster of events. But there's only one way to find out, is to try. When we are tense, we know that certain foods are soothing and comforting. Alcohol falls within that category too, because we've got this connection with it. It will help you to relax. It will wind you down, right? And this is great marketing. Okay, and it's a depressant. So alcohol will help to bring you down, right? But it will also leave you feeling anxious the next day, most likely as well. So if you're tense, what is probably one of the best things that you can do? Take yourself out into nature if that's an option. Take yourself into a bedroom or a room where there's no other people, and just allow yourself to do some breath work, because breathing will help you to reduce tension massively. And by breathing, I mean, it can be really, really simple. So the physiological sigh will help you to bring yourself right down into a state of calm really, really quickly. And the easiest way to do that is to take 2 short in breaths through your nose and then a longer out breath through your mouth. So it goes like this. I'm just doing 3 times. It probably sounds really very odd if you're just listening on audio. You've watched me do it if you're watching on video, but that will help, as will breathing in for 4, holding for a count of 7, and then breathing out for a count of 8. Now, that kind of breathing will bring your whole system down into your parasympathetic nervous system. That's your rest and digest part of your nervous system that allows tension to just literally kind of dissipate. And if you can use visualization and think about tension a bit like a waterfall of stress and tension coming down on top of your head, right? And it's hitting you hard, but just let it flow. Let it flow all the way down through your body and let it trickle out through your feet. So by utilizing visualization, by helping yourself to breathe better, now we are more relaxed. And when we're more relaxed and we're in that state of calm and relaxation, the body then doesn't need to go turn to something else to make it feel better, because it's already in a better space and a better place. Now, these are all practical things that you can have a go at and utilize, because I want to leave you on this last episode with some practical stuff. In terms of what do you actually need to help yourself to get free permanently from issues with your body image, over-exercising, overeating, under-eating, over-drinking, thinking about drinking, thinking about not drinking, what do we need to have? We need to have a desire. We need to have a powerful desire to feel and be different. Because if you genuinely want to transform, you have to have a complete change of identity. You need to be the person who is not fazed by food, who can take it or leave it. You need to become the person who's totally ambivalent to drink. You need to be confident in putting your boundaries in place with other people. We need to let go of being a people pleaser and a perfectionist. And so for most of us, and that was my story, and it is with the people that I work with, you completely change your identity so that you can become the person you actually desire to be. Is that available to everybody? Yes. Does it take effort? Yes. If you choose to call effort hard work, that's probably going to put you off. If you choose to call it effort that's going to have a great outcome, then hopefully that will encourage you to have the key ingredients that you need. And the key ingredients that you need are consistency, commitment, compassion with yourself, and curiosity. Those 4 key ingredients will allow you to take the steps that need to be taken for you to be able to feel free. And it is possible. It's hard, obviously, if you do it on your own, because you don't know which steps to take in which order, in the place and the space that you're starting, and with the stuff that comes along into your life, which is why I always recommend that you work with somebody who can help you to get through this, who's been where you are, who's walked in your shoes and has come out the other side successfully and has maintained it. Now, whether that's me or somebody else, it doesn't matter, but it's so much easier if you do it with support, if you do it with guidance, if you do it with somebody who's going to help you to stay committed and curious and compassionate and crucially consistent with doing the stuff that you need to do until your new ways of thinking, behaving, and feeling become more habituated, more automatic. It's available to everybody. You don't have to be a special human being, right? You have to have the desire though, and you do have to put in the effort, because here's the thing, I can't actually put in the effort for you. I can help you, I can tell you the what and the how, right? But you have to actually do the stuff. You have to create that new identity, and it's there just waiting for you. If you're ready to grab a hold of it, I would love to help you. Thank you for listening this season. I hope you have enjoyed the episodes and the guests that we have had. I've got some more guests lined up for us in the new season, season 4, which will start again in September. So until then, remember, you only have one body as far as we know. Take care of it, because it is taking care of you. Have a great summer, and I'll see you later on in the year.